My name's Ben, I'm 48 years old, I live here in Melbourne. I run an aftercare program at a primary school and I'm also a musician.
I'm Will, I'm 44 years old, also live here in Melbourne, and I work here at the school we're at today, and I co-run a re-engagement program with teenagers across the western suburbs of Melbourne.
Getting a diagnosis and starting treatment.
I remember going to my doctor maybe about 12 years ago, and I just had a little bit of a weird scab on my knee, which I didn't know what it was. I thought I would just talk to my doctor about it. And she said, oh, it's just a little bit of psoriasis. We'll give you a little topical cream and that should take care of it. So I used that for a few months, and over that time, I just started getting other little patches show up on my other knees and my elbows and other places. So I was using the topical cream on that, and then I went back to the doctor and she said, okay, well, it looks like it's maybe a little bit more serious than we thought. So she sent me off to a dermatologist and they diagnosed me with plaque psoriasis, which I then, over the following years, tried numerous different creams and ointments, and then it started appearing on my scalp, so I was using different shampoos, and it would kind of keep it at bay, but it would never really knock it out altogether. I would notice it would get worse over the winter as well. Over one of the winters when it got quite bad and it was all over my arms and my legs and my back, the dermatologist suggested that I try some medications. So I've only been on oral medications. A few months ago, my dermatologist suggested that I try a different medication, and then a few months into that I started noticing my joints, my knuckles and my wrists and my elbows and my knees starting to get a bit stiff and creaky. So I went back to the dermatologist and she said we might send you off to a rheumatologist because it's possible you have psoriatic arthritis as well. So I went off to a rheumatologist and she confirmed and suggested that I go back onto my old medication. That medication takes about 3 months to start working, so there was a good 2.5 months where my psoriasis was quite bad and I was in a lot of discomfort with my joints until that medication started kind of kicking back in. So that was a tough time, but now I'm back in the swing of the medication and everything's okay.
I first got diagnosed, or I first noticed a bit similar to Ben, so I had a patch on my ankle, on my right ankle. So I was 28 and I remember going to the doctors. He didn't tell me what it was, he just gave me this ointment for it. And I tried that for a little bit and it kind of took like the plaque off the top, but didn't really ever soothe it, or it was still itchy and still sore. Because it was on my ankle, it wasn't a big deal. And I just, after I ran out of ointment, I kind of left it. And that never really progressed for a number of years. So I just stayed as the one patch, and the patch got bigger and bigger over the next few years. And I remember I was living down at Phillip Island and I had a friend come and stay, and it was summertime, so I was in shorts, and she looked down and she says, what's that on your ankle? I'm like, just a patch of weird skin. I still didn't know what it was. And she says, oh, that looks a bit like a fungus thing. You better probably get that looked at. So I went to the doctors at Phillip Island and he told me it was plaque psoriasis and gave me a different ointment to what I'd tried originally. And it was really expensive, I remember that. And used that straight away, and it took the plaque off, and it just left this red patch, pigmentation patch on my ankle. But then I think my diet was really poor during that time, around 2013 to 2015. Probably wasn't sleeping very well, was smoking, and it started just exploding everywhere. So I'd get patches a bit on my knees, it started coming up on my elbows. I remember even in school, one of the kids, what's that on your elbows? He says, well, have you got rice bubbles glued to your elbows? I'm like, no, and I'm trying to tell him about that it's psoriasis and it's actually really sore. Then it just kept progressively getting worse. So I think my relationship at the time was not in a good space, and it was coming to an end. So I think that was contributing to it, the stress. And so by 2018, that relationship ended and it just exploded everywhere. It was through my hair, it was on my back, I was just getting lesions of it everywhere. On my torso, all down my arms, my hands were really painfully sore, and they were cracking, and so I was still using the same ointment. And the doctor I was seeing applied and got a special grant for me to get that ointment cheaper because it was quite expensive. And that was working great for a while. Again, would take the peaks of the plaque off and make it not as painful through the movement. And I'll just be left with red pigmented skin everywhere. It just was getting progressively worse, and it was sore. I was single, as I said by then. So it was quite embarrassing to go out on dates and things. But luckily it wasn't on my face. That was the one space I didn't get it. But you'd tell people through chatting, and some people were like, oh, I don't want to be any part of that. Ghosted kind of thing. So some people were really understanding of it, but I was quite embarrassed to tell people, and it was embarrassing to see it all over me, having students point it out, trying to tell them what it was and have them still pull faces at me. I was still using that topical cream, and it was to the point where it was oily. It was like it would leave stains through all my clothes. I actually come home at the end of the day and get into old clothes that I didn't mind getting stained and put it on everywhere. It was a big process. It would take about 25 minutes to do, and it would just stain through the clothes that I was wearing, and it would just quickly come back if I stopped doing that on a daily basis. My friend's sister-in-law was over, and she was seeing a dermatology clinic for some other reason. And she said they were running a clinical trial there, and she noticed how severe my psoriasis was. And she said, maybe you should contact them. So I made an appointment. I saw them straight away, went in, and they did an assessment of the psoriasis, and they said I needed a 15% coverage rate to be able to go on the biological trial for the medication that they were offering. And they assessed that it was near 20%. So I qualified to go on the trial. So they were injectables into my stomach, 2 needles every second month. And I'd go to the clinic. That was pretty full on for the first year. But once I started getting the injectables, within a month, all the peaks were gone over my arms, my legs, off my scalp, off my body. What I did notice though, on my torso, the red pigmentation could take up to 6 months to clear up. They stuck around for quite a while. There was no pain anymore. I wasn't that itchy burning sensation that I had. I had full movement of my hands and my knees and things without cracking the skin. And I felt really good about it. I'm not really a part of the study anymore, but I still have access to the medication. And it keeps it at bay, so I don't use any of the topical creams. I still, through the winter, it does, I get a little bit on my knuckles where it starts drying out. And the original patch on my ankle, so that had been gone for a number of years, but I've noticed again through the winter, it grows back a little bit. And it's probably about the size of a 5-cent piece. That certainly was a big confidence boost going on the clinical trial and having my psoriasis almost immediately cleared up. But yeah, feeling really good about where I'm at. The only thing that worries me now is what happens next after I don't have access to the medication anymore. Will it come back? It still worries me that, if I don't have access to this medication, that I could then end up back to where I was back in 2018. But I'm quite happy with where I am now, and I hope I get to continue.
Living with psoriasis.
I remember when you had your big flare up in 2018, because you and I were probably going through some stressful stuff at the same time, and I remember being in the staff room at school and you saying, man, my psoriasis is so bad at the moment, and lifting your shirt up and just seeing these big red dots all over your arm and thinking, oh my God, I'm so grateful that mine's not that bad. Mine was pretty bad. But then I remember you going on the clinical trial and telling me that I should go to them because we were going to the same dermatologist. And I went in and they did the PASI test on me as well. That's the one where they look at how much coverage you have.
Yeah.
And I didn't have enough to get on the same one that you were on, but they had a different one where it was a medication that I could take. But I had to stop taking my other medication, but my psoriasis just flared and I was like, I can't do this. So I had to get off the trial and go back on my medication. My dermatologist is always saying to me, oh, it's just really unlucky that you don't have it all over your face. No, it's not unlucky for me.
That's actually pleasing.
Yeah, but she's like, yeah, but if you had it all over your face, then you'd be eligible to get the biologics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was kind of annoyed at myself that I didn't go to a dermatologist years before.
Had your doctor diagnosed you with psoriasis?
He had, but I mean,
Right.
I just thought that you just get a topical cream and
right.
that's it. That's
Right.
that's your life from then on. And I probably would have just kept going along the same line of just doing nothing and putting
Yeah.
on endless amounts of cream, half an hour every day, and looking
Yeah.
like a big oily monster. Yeah, don't miss that at all. Don't miss that process. Yeah, definitely mental health wise, that when in the height of it all, that yeah, it was just like feeling really low, not really wanting people to notice it. We'll try and cover up as much as possible so it wasn't as noticeable and I wouldn't have to talk about it. I was okay to talk about it, but I felt like a broken record that, you know, you're saying the same things and repeat to people. Some people really did understand it. And that was a bit that really lifted my spirits during those times, the people who were empathetic and understood and were caring about it. The amount of people that actually did care and were asking about it, and you know, not just my family, it was, you know, close friends and friends of friends that took an interest and supported me through those darker times. But no, it's a much brighter time now.
So I remember playing squash with my brother, and he knew that I'd had the diagnosis, but I don't think he kind of really understood what it meant. And we're playing squash, and he looks down at my knees and was like, "Whoa, what's going on? You're bleeding!" And one of my spots had cracked, and I was bleeding just from running around. Like, it's my brother, so I shouldn't really be embarrassed about that kind of stuff in front of my brother, but of course I was. There was a lot of that kind of stuff that happened earlier on with embarrassment around the plaque build-ups. At school in summertime when I want to wear shorts and run around with the kids and t-shirts and things, and I've got these big patches on my arms and my knees, and the kids are pointing them out and saying, "What's wrong with your arms?" And I'm having to explain it. But when it's constant and you're constantly having to talk about it and explain to people what's going on, it's tiring and it's embarrassing. Nowadays I'm not so self-conscious about it. Like, the kids will ask me and I'll just tell them and they'll move on. It's more if I'm out in social settings and I'm meeting new people, and I have quite a lot of psoriasis on my scalp, and I don't notice a lot of the time, but I'm scratching at it. If I'm wearing a black shirt, then I'm suddenly covered in snow, and I'll be talking to people and I'll see them looking at my shoulders, and I'll be like, "Oh," quickly brush myself off.
Again, being an educator, you know, younger kids getting down on your knees to help when they were working at their desks, and getting up, and then you'd feel the pain, or you'd notice that they'd be bleeding through your pants, or so it was quite sore. And I was just really conscious of it. I'd go out with friends and I'd constantly be scratching, and then I'd look down and I'd notice there'd be like a little patch of white snow on the table, and I'm like, oh, and try and dust it off.
I play guitar, so if I spend a couple of hours at a gig playing guitar, I do wake up the next day and I'm quite sore in my joints, which is upsetting because it's a big part of my life doing that. So that's kind of been hard to deal with. My rheumatologist and my dermatologist are in contact with each other, and they're trying to work out a way that I can get onto the biologics, get some injections, and hopefully that will kind of work better than the meds that I'm currently taking.
Seeking help.
I think when it comes to my physical health or my mental health, I'm quite open to finding out what's going on and getting any kind of support that I can. So I don't feel like there's been any stigma in the process of getting a diagnosis or getting help. I found a dermatologist and they were all really great. They had lots of things to offer, lots of great communication around any side effects of medication or other things that I could do to kind of make things a bit easier. So, everyone's been really helpful.
The dermatology clinic that I still see, they had really good support people and doctors to talk to about it. So seek advice sooner, see a doctor, and if you're not happy with what the doctor's giving you, then go further. Ask to see a dermatologist or get that really professional advice, skincare that you need that you're not getting from your health provider.
Yeah, I think it affects you physically, but there's also the emotional toll as well. So I think it's really important to be talking to people about what you're going through. So if they could be family or friends, or seeking out professional help in that area. I think it's really important to not suffer in silence. You don't need to. We can talk openly about things, so people are so much more understanding of medical conditions nowadays. The stigma doesn't need to be there, and you're kind of adding to it if you're hiding it away. So it's important to be talking about it for yourself, but also to kind of destigmatise it for everyone else as well.
Peer support.
We met at school,
Yeah.
and we're both clowns, so we kind of hit it off straight away. I don't even remember how we both realised that we have psoriasis. Like kindred spirits, oh, another one like me.
Yeah. I guess we had more to talk about then, apart from being clowns and mucking around in the hallway like we would have at school. But yeah, and interesting, we'll chat about our different treatments and things, well, lack of treatment that I was getting at the time. And then obviously comparing once I started the trial, and then talking about our experiences. We still catch up. Now we don't work at the same school anymore. We're at different schools to what we were at the time, but we still catch up for breakfasts and see how each other's are going. Still meaning to get along to one of your gigs these days.
I think with any kind of challenge that you face, if you can find people that are dealing with similar things, it's going to make it easier for you. You've got somebody who you can talk to about it that's also going through a similar thing. So, you know, that empathy is there straight away. We were both part of a little focus group a little while ago where there were other people in the group that had it a lot worse than I've ever had it. And that kind of makes it a bit easier on me, but it's also a bit like, well, is that what's coming for me as well? So, I mean, it's good hearing other people's stories and perspectives because it makes yours a bit more bearable.
We just compared experiences from, you know, apart from our friendship, we compared what was going on. Like you said, when we did that online study, that it was just heartbreaking to hear what other people were going through. And I'm like, wow. And I, you know, like you said, I had it worse than what you did. And then there were people that I felt that had it tenfold worse. And I'm like, I couldn't imagine what life would be like. Yeah, you have friends that can empathise and understand with what you're going through, but someone who actually understands and going through it themselves is completely different. That, you know, that you feel like you've got a wingman there to talk to and like to turn to. Like your other friends can support you, but no one really understands it like someone who's going through it themselves.
Mental well-being.
I think we can always do better supporting people with mental health in all kinds of areas. I don't remember through my interactions with dermatologist or rheumatologist anyone offering anything to me to support my mental health or even talking about it at all. From my experience and having spoken to other people in this forum that we did, I think it's a big part of it as well, and I think it does need to be talked about. Kind of flagging that early will help people kind of think about that when they're actually going through those low points and thinking, actually, I think I'm low because of what's happening physically, and I think I could benefit from talking to somebody about this. So yeah, I think there can definitely be some more work in that area and definitely things being offered to people.
I was seeing counsellors and things outside of that for the relationship breakdown and things, so the psoriasis would get spoken about. I think that could be a part of, through the services offered from dermatologists, is to have referrals to counsellors and things to talk about it. So hearing other people's, where we're actually been debilitating to their lives and, you know, stopping them and impacting them in severe ways, then I'm sure that they would need to speak about it. So having from a dermatologist, having then a referral to see a counsellor or to be able to speak about it, or, you know, to work on those things as well, to not feel stigmatised or be able to feel comfortable about participating in your life and maintaining that.
Worries for the future.
For the future, my worry is that with the injectables, because I'm still getting it through the clinical trial, even though it's ended, that if the product doesn't go to market, or if when it goes to market then I don't have access to it because my psoriasis isn't bad, I don't want to come off the injectables because I am worried about where this would go. I know mentally, and my mental health is in a much better space than what it was when I was severely covered in it. I still worry that if I am to come off the medication, that it could just come out and I'll just be in pain again, and it will just be that embarrassing thing where it's just covering me from head to toe. Or the medication might be really expensive, that, if it's not on the PBS, that's another worry I have about it. But for the moment, I'm okay. I'm feeling really good about where I'm at, and that's just my concern going into the future.
I feel pretty anxious about the arthritis diagnosis because it can be degenerative for my joints. I mean, I'm not an active person, I don't really play sports and stuff, but I work with kids, so I am kind of out playing in the yard with children, and I worry about how much longer I'm going to be able to do that if my knees give out or if I'm just kind of constantly achy. I think the biggest thing for me is being a musician, my knuckles and my hands getting really sore. So playing gigs and stuff and being in pain for the next couple of days is pretty upsetting.
Advice for others living with psoriasis.
Talk to somebody as soon as you can about it, because it might just be a little patch that shows up one day, but it could lead to something bigger. And I think it's important that you're on top of it and that you're getting medical help with it so that you can continue to live comfortably and enjoy doing the things that you want to do, and don't be worried about any stigma around it because your doctors aren't going to care. That's really important, getting onto it early.
If you start noticing that you're making changes or altering the things you'd normally do, such as your interactions or the activities that you would do, then obviously it's becoming more than just a little patch. It's impacting your life. And it might start off really subtly at first, just by the changes of clothing that you would choose. Then I would say that it's time to go and see someone further than your doctor. Ask to see a specialist, a dermatologist. Go and see someone about it and don't be embarrassed about it. From my own perspective, once you do get treatment, that there is the hope that it will clear up and it won't be noticeable and people won't ask questions about it anymore.
I feel like there's a lot of work being done in the area. So that gives me hope as well, that there's stuff that's happening to make our lives a bit easier.
For more patient stories and resources to help you live well with psoriasis, go to ghlf.org.au/psoriasis. This video was made possible with support from Amgen Australia.